Now while those are browning, oftentimes people can more easily find black trumpets dried rather than fresh. And I brought some dried that I collected earlier this year. Let me just show you. They're so easy to rehydrate. I just put a handful in a bowl, and they're such thin flesh that it doesn't take very long for them to rehydrate at all. So you just cover them with water. And then I generally move them around, and you can already feel them. They're already pretty soft.
Look at the mushroom liquor already. It's starting lovely. You can't get flavor like this any other way.
And that's so important because I always save the mushroom liquor to use as a flavoring for any sauce I do. You know, the great thing about wild mushrooms is that the flavor you get from them is so distinctive. I often say the difference between a wild mushroom and the domesticated supermarket mushroom is the difference between a garden fresh tomato and a supermarket tomato.
Wow, that's saying something.
Yeah, and it's very true. I'm letting the shallots just soften. They're cooking really rapidly.
Well, this is
because the pan was a bit hot.
The pan is hot. So you're going to take it off the heat a bit?
Yeah, then we're going to toss the mushrooms in. Let me show you, in terms of the black trumpets that we've got here, what I often do is I'll pick up the whole handful and wring them out to get most of the soaking liquid out, or the liqueur. And you can see, and then when their texture is not quite as nice when they've been dried, and so I often, though I'll shred the fresh ones, I'll chop the dried ones coarsely before I put them back in the pan. And then even if they've been dried, you always want to saute them because that's what it really transfers the flavor elements. So that's a pile of dried ones, but we're going to put these fresh ones in here. And I've got one hole here that I left for show, but we want to make sure there's nothing inside it. With mushrooms, you always want to clean them, just to get the dirt and any leaves and things out of them. But some of them, I rarely will wash them, but I always tell people who ask that question that if it makes you feel better about using them, wash them. But if you wash them, use them right away.
They have to be very dry, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
you have to
cooking.
Make sure they're very dry before you cook them, otherwise they're going to steam, isn't that right?
Right, so you want to, after you wash them, I usually suggest that people dry them on paper towels.
I was taught that you put a little salt on this too, so that it releases its essence.
That's what I was about to. And it's because these are so thin-fleshed, they're not going to release as much liquid as a chanterelle will. And we'll put these in as well. And with a lot of mushrooms, you really want them to lose all their liquid before you think they're really ready. Oh, this is going to be a lot of good black trumpets in here. Can you smell those already?
I can. They're divine.
Yeah, the richness.
Smell or vision.
Yeah. The only mushroom that grows in Maine that I think has as rich a flavor as black trumpets would be really fresh, mature morels.
Do you have a secret for getting the dirt out of morels? Every spring I try to get some morels, and I think I've cleaned them, and then you get that grit that is so annoying.
And
what do you do?
Do you get them fresh or dried?
Oh, I get them fresh. I usually call Rosemont Market and say, "Do you have them in yet?" And John will say, "Yes, I do. Come right on down." So that's when I get them, when they're fresh.
In the Midwest, what they always do with morels is they will soak them in slightly salted water to get the dirt out of them and also any bugs that might be. I usually don't. I'll cut off the base where there's most of the dirt and then use a brush. I always cut them lengthwise to make sure there's no slugs or salad bugs inside them. So this is when I would add back the chicken back in, because they're pretty much done now.
Okay.
With the soaking liquor, you oftentimes don't need the wine. You
Yeah.
can see it's pretty liquidy.
But I can see that wine would be a very nice thing to have. Now I have some cream.
The cream is perfect because, again, with the chanterelles, their flavor elements are carried in the fats, and the fat of the cream is really helpful. With the cream, I'm a little careful not to bring it up to a boil, so we might want to have this off the fire.
So now we're coming into winter, so your passion for mushrooms is probably going to wane a little bit, or you're not going to be out foraging. So how will you keep your hand in?
I won't have fresh mushrooms, but I probably have 20 pounds of dried maitake in my freezer. I have, or frozen maitake. I have dried maitake, dried honey mushrooms, dried black trumpets, frozen chanterelles, frozen boletus, porcini, dried porcini. So there's plenty of soups and stews and risottos in my future.
I see. This is just such an interesting field. I mean, there are thousands of mushrooms, are there not? Hundreds?
Thousands. There's probably between 2,000 and 3,000 mushrooms in Maine.
In Maine, my goodness.
Of those, there are 40 or so that are eaten pretty commonly, and a few. There's probably 6 mushrooms in Maine that are really seriously deadly poisonous, that are relatively common, and more that'll sicken you. But a number of great common mushrooms that are wonderfully safe to eat.
So there's a lot to learn, and so I would recommend buying his books and learning about these mushrooms. I, for one, have been fascinated for years, and I have 3 books that I haven't really read, but I thumb through every now and then. But next year, I certainly hope to take one of your walks, because I really want to get into this so that I will feel confident when I find the one variety that I will become very familiar with before I decide to cook it.
Well, many mushroom books are field guides, which are incredibly boring to read. And one of the things that motivated me to write Chanterelle Dreams, Amanita Nightmares is I wanted to capture them as stories.
I see.
Stories about the mushrooms that were readable, so that someone can sit down and read a chapter at a time and learn about the mushrooms. So I feature some of the best edible mushrooms in the world and include not only information about where they grow and how to find them, but some recipes. But I also have some information about really dangerous poisonous ones and some of the mysteries of poisonous ones. And I talk about mushrooms and culture, the difference between a mushroom-loving land like Russia or parts of Europe or China, and a mushroom-fearing country like America, where we consider mushrooms poisonous unless we know differently. And we are suspect. Oh, that looks wonderful.
Who's looking at this?
Yeah.
Can you see this? It's lovely. So tell us what you call this dish again.
I call this black trumpets or chicken breasts with black trumpets in a cream sauce. I call it dinner.